Hello, what's up YouTube? In this tutorial I'll show you how I did the skin retouching and color grading for this very image. So many of you love this when I posted it on Instagram. And by the way, you can follow me on Instagram at ronnixphotography, and let's link up there and you can send me DMs and we chat about different topics about photography and retouching as a whole. So I'll show you how I edited this, and we're just going to go straight into this tutorial whereby I'm going to be doing the color grading, how I added that nice and beautiful glow, and how I did the skin retouching and eye whitening within just less than 10 minutes. So let's kick in with this very tutorial. And if at all you find it helpful, make it a point that you press the like button on this video so that YouTube can recommend and push this video to so many people out there. So usually we are going to do frequency separation as usual, and we're just going to duplicate the background layer twice by pressing Ctrl J twice to create two copies from the background layer. And I'm going to rename this to low frequency, and I'm going to name this into high frequency. So usually a frequency separation is going to divide the image into the textures and the colors. So the colors are going to be in the low frequency layer and the textures are going to be in the high frequency layer. So usually we select the low frequency layer and turn off the high frequency layer and come right here so that we retain the colors in the image. We're just going to come to filter, and they're going to go straight to blur and come down to Gaussian blur right there. So after coming to Gaussian blur, this is the point when you determine the amount of details or textures that you want to remain with in your final or retouched image. And you can see you can either zoom in or zoom out depending on what you want to look at in this preview. So make sure the preview window is checked or turned on. So after zooming in, just look for the area that is going to represent the overall textures in the image, or the area that has more skin details than the rest of the image. That is going to be a hero area or a reference point for the rest of the skin in the image. So just come to the radius and start taking the radius up. So you shouldn't cram the radius because your images may be having various or varying levels of textures. So I'm just going to take this radius up to when we're just starting to lose out completely on the details in the image. So at around 6, that radius is okay. That is when I'm just starting to lose out on the details. So usually how you have to stop at the point when you're just starting to lose out on those details, and just come and press OK. And now it is going to make the image look blurry, as you can see right now. So come and select the high frequency and now activate it by turning on the visibility icon. And with the high frequency layer selected, simply come to image and come down to apply image. So in this case, we just want to remain with the textures in the high frequency layer. So just come to the source is the name of the image. So the layer is, we want to extract the textures from this low frequency layer so that we can only have the textures in the high frequency layer. So usually if at all you have 16 right here, meaning your image is going to be a 16-bit image, just come to the blending mode and change it from whichever it is and change it to add for a 16-bit image, and the opacity has to be 100%. Preserve transparency and mask cannot check. The scale has to be 2 and offset 0. Make sure you turn on the invert option. So you're going to be seeing your textures on this gray kind of layer because you always have to ensure that your preview is on, and in that case you're going to be having the textures on this gray kind of layer and it is going to be lacking the colors. But if at all you have 8 right here, meaning your image is going to be an 8-bit image, make sure you select the low frequency layer. Invert is not checked and the channel is RGB, of course. Then the blending mode has to be subtract, the opacity at 100%, preserve transparency and mask cannot check, and the scale has to be 2 and offset 128. That is for an 8-bit image, and you'll have your textures on this square kind of layer. So usually you have to apply the right frequency separation to the right image regarding the bit depth of that image. So I have 16, meaning I'm just going to change this back to add. Opacity at 100, the scale is 2, offset 0, preserve transparency and mask cannot check, and I'm just going to invert this and simply press OK. Just come to the blend mode and change it from normal and change it all the way down to linear light to have back my image the way it was meant to be. So we are just going to put these two in a group by selecting both and clicking Ctrl. Then press Ctrl G or Command G on the keyboard to group them, and you can double click to rename that to frequency separation. So there shouldn't be a difference between the separated image and the original background image. So what we're going to do, we're just going to click on the drop down arrow right here and select the low frequency layer. So usually when you're doing skin retouching, I prefer first of all use what we know as the mixer brush tool. So that helps us to blend or create even skin tone transitions in the image, and later on apply the lasso tool technique, then remove the blemishes. That is what we're going to do. And before you can use the mixer brush tool, you have to set it right. So I'm just going to come under the brushes, simply right click and get the mixer brush tool. This is for newer versions of Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop 2020, but if at all you have older versions of Photoshop, you may find your mixer brush tool below here. So in order to set it up, make sure the hardness is at 0% and make sure it is a clean brush, and you select this option which says clean the brush after each and every stroke. The weight we are going to be using is 9%, the load of 75, the mix at 90, and the flow of 100%. Make sure sample all layers is not checked, because when you check this option, it means as you're painting in the low frequency layer, it means that the brush is also going to sample textures and paint them back in the low frequency layer, which we don't want to happen. So make sure sample all layers is not checked. And as we are retouching, these are the shortcuts you have to use. Control plus or Command plus is going to zoom in, and Command minus is going to zoom out your image. Then if at all your mixer brush tool is showing this cross icon, make sure you press caps or the caps lock key on the keyboard, and that is going to get your mixer brush tool as a circle like mine is. And in order to increase or decrease on the size of the mixer brush tool, you can use the open and close brackets depending on the area you're going to be working on. So we're just going to start blending the transitions within the skin tones or skin colors in the image. And in order to see that better, you can just come and turn off the texture or high frequency layer, and now come to the low frequency layer and now simply zoom in by pressing Ctrl or Command plus. Don't over zoom in, just retouch from a distance. So this looks okay, because when you zoom all the way in, you're not going to be seeing the uneven transitions within the skin. So retouch at a distance. So that is going to be better, and you have to be playing around with different sizes of the brush depending on how close or how far the details are in your image or the area you want to retouch in the image. So just going to start blending the transitions. So how to do this? Simply left click on your mouse and start moving your mixer brush tool, and as you're moving that, make sure you're still selected on the low frequency layer, and just continue or start painting through on the skin, and we're just going to be painting colors that are looking alike in the image. So this is what I'm going to do for the rest of the image, and I'll see you when I'm done doing all this process on this very image, because I don't want you to spend a long time watching this tutorial. So let's start painting and blend so that we can have nice and beautiful transitions within the skin of our model right now. Yes, hello, welcome back. And now you can see I'm done using the mixer brush tool to blend or even out the transitions within the image. And when I turn on the texture layer right now, as you can see, and I turn on and off the overall group of the frequency separation, that's the image before and that's the after. Before, after, I hope you can see what we have just done by using the mixer brush tool. So if at all you feel like you want perfect what you did using the mixer brush tool, you can come and simply get what we know as the lasso tool. Make sure it is in new selection mode, and the feathers to be around 22 pixels, because as we are making a selection on the skin, you want the edges to be as smooth as possible. So make sure you leave the feather between 18 and 25 pixels. So for this, I prefer a medium, which is around 22 pixels. And I'm going to start making a selection on the skin area, just like that. So make sure you select only on the skin area and just follow the way that area is shaped. And after making that selection, simply come to filter and come to blur and come back to Gaussian blur. And in this case, you can now take the radius up the point when you feel like you're getting the best out of your skin texture. But usually I multiply the radius that I had for my initial skin retouching, and I just multiply it by 3, and I simply type in that value. So remember we had 6, so 6 by 3 is 18. So I'll just type in 18 and just press OK. So whichever radius you may have used in your image, just multiply that radius by 3 and just type in that value and simply press OK. So this is going to fine tune the areas we may have missed out when we're using our mixer brush tool. So I'm just going to come and make those shapes just like that. So I'm making shapes the way an area is shaped to keep or retain the original shape of the model's face or the facial structures. So you can see how I'm drawing those selections. And if at all you feel like an effect is too much, simply after applying the Gaussian blur, right click on the selection and come to fade Gaussian blur, and you can simply reduce or fade that effect from applying the image too much. So we're just going to, and in order to deselect, just go straight to make another selection. It is going to automatically deselect the previous selection that you had in the image. So I'm just going to come, when it comes to the nose area, this is the most misused step. So when it comes to the nose area, right click, apply it on the right hand side of the nose, and come and do it on the left hand side. But don't apply it on the whole nose as a whole, because that is going to flatten the nose. So usually I don't prefer to apply it on the highlight, because I already applied it on that highlight using our mixer brush tool, because when you apply it on the highlight area, it is going to flatten out that area and the nose is going to look very big and flat, which we don't want. Remember, our aim right now is not to distort the original shape of the model's face, and we want to retain the original facial structures in the model's face, just like that. And I'm just going to come right to this lower part of the chin and apply my Gaussian blur. So when we are done retouching or blending the skin transitions, we are just going to go straight into removing the blemishes. Remember, we have to remove or clean up the blemishes in the image so that we can have both blended skin color transitions and also no blemishes within the skin of the model. So we're just going to come and clean up the blemishes by selecting the texture or high frequency layer and come and get the clone stamp tool. The blend is normal, and I prefer to use a hardness of around 45 to 50 and opacity at 100 and the flow at 100%. Make sure aligned is checked and current layer is checked, because we only want to work in the blemishes or on the blemishes that are part of the texture or high frequency layer. And right now I'm just going to zoom all the way in and start cleaning up the blemishes. So how this works, you basically hold down the alternate key on the keyboard close to the blemish and simply left click close to the blemish. So you hold down alternate on a clean area near the blemish and simply left click to copy that area and release both the alternate key and the left click button and simply drag over the blemish. So make sure that your clone stamp tool is slightly bigger than the blemish you want to remove, and simply left click over it to eliminate it. So that is how to remove blemishes using a clone stamp tool. So I'm just going to be removing these blemishes, and I'll see you after or when I'm done cleaning up the blemishes so that we can go straight into the color grading process. So I'm just going to forward this right. Hello and welcome back. I'm done removing the blemishes from the image. That's the before and after. That is what we have right now for both the skin retouching and blemish removal. So the next thing we're going to do is just going to go straight into working on the image to look better and color grade it to look better. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a stamp visible layer by pressing Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard to create a stamp visible layer. So I used Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard, or Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard, create a stamp visible layer. And I'm just going straight into the camera raw filter because I feel like the image is a little bit too bright for my liking and the highlights are a little bit blown out and shouting for my liking. So I'm just going to go straight to the camera raw filter, and that is going to load straight, and we're going to play around with the highlights of this image. So just going straight into the basic panel and simply take down the highlights of the image and take down the exposure slightly, and also take down the whites just like that. And we're going to go down to the HSL panel and come to luminance and simply darken the oranges. Come to the hues and simply make the oranges slide to the red color, and also take the reds towards the magentas, and that looks okay. And I'm just going to come and press back okay to go back into Photoshop to do the last step for the color grading. So this is the image after the camera raw filter. So I just went straight to the hue and saturation adjustment layer and just click on it. And under this, what I do, I just come to my reds. So click on where you see master and come to the reds and come to the lightness of the reds and simply take the lightness down, and that is going to make the image better because I felt like it was a little bit too yellow. And I'm going to come and do the same for my yellows. Take the lightness down still, and that looks great to me. I'm just going to zoom out slightly. So after that, I'm just going to add a little bit more of the contrast to the image. So just come and add a contrast layer just like that, and that looks fine. Then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to come to selective color, and I simply come to the blacks and simply add in my blacks just like that. So I'm just going to leave it at around 2 and simply cool down the image slightly to around -2. That looks okay and looks great to me. So I feel like I want to add a little bit of shine to the image. So what I'm going to do, basically, I'm going to come to the curves adjustment layer right here and create a curves adjustment layer. So simply come to select and come to my color range tool, and under that I'm just going to make the dark areas darker in this very image. So with the color range selected, just come to select, make sure sampled colors has been checked, and make sure the fast color picker tool is checked, and also selection is also checked, and quick mask is also selected, and simply click on the shadow areas that I want. So you can play around with the fuzziness, and the selected area in this case is going to be white in color. So you can play around with the fuzziness depending on the intensity that you want. Just come and press OK. So remember, the curves adjustment layer was not played or tampered with. So just going to come and simply, since you have selected the shadows in the image, you're just going to click in the middle of this curves adjustment layer and simply take it down to add that kind of shine to the image. And that looks okay. That is the before and after. It is just subtle and not too much. So lastly, let's do some eye whitening to the image. Just come and create a hue and saturation adjustment layer and simply come and desaturate it up to around -97, and make sure the white layer mask is selected. Press Ctrl Command I on the keyboard to invert that effect. Come under the brushes, simply right click and get your brush tool, and make sure the blend is normal opacity and the flat 100%, and make sure the hardness is at 0%. Then come under these two small boxes and simply click on those boxes and make sure white is on top. And in order to get white on top, simply use X on the keyboard, or you can use this arrow right here to get white on top, and simply zoom in by using Ctrl Command plus on the keyboard to zoom into the eyes that you want to whiten. So we're just going to be painting on the eyes to whiten them. So using our brush, we're just going to paint on what we feel rather should be white in the white area of the eye, just like that. And that is going to whiten the eyes in a more natural way, just like that. Come to the second eye and also apply the eye whitening, and that looks great, and it is a more faster technique to do eye whitening. So just going to come and do a little bit of teeth whitening right here, and that is going to make the teeth pop. So command minus to zoom out, and this is what we have right now. So we just want to save the image so that it looks better and sharp after saving it in Photoshop. So we're just going to come right to, let me show you a quick before and after rather. Before, that's the after, before, after. So we're just going to come to file and come to export, then come down to export as, and when you click on that, it's going to bring for us another window within Photoshop that is labeled as export as. So with that window, we're just going to be having various techniques or adjustment that we have to apply to that window. And under that, we can see that we have the file settings. Of course, make sure the image is in JPEG because this is supported by most social media and websites. So make sure the quality is at 100%. So resample, if at all want a slightly sharper image after saving it, make sure the resample is by cubic sharper, and this is going to add some kind of sharpening to your image that is not going to be too much. So if at all you have issues with color change issues, or if at all you have color change issues every single time you save and post images on social media, make sure you come to color space and make sure you check these two small boxes that have convert sRGB and embed color profile. And in this case, Photoshop is going to embed the colors that you color graded into your image. So basically, when all this is done and you have the preview or your image displaying, just come and press the export and simply save the image wherever you want to save it. So basically, this is it for this tutorial. And if at all you love this, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe this channel if at all you have been watching and you're not a subscriber yet. Ronnix from Ronnix Photography. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in yet more amazing tutorials, and don't forget to keep practicing and also keep creating.